Okay, thanks a lot, Ian. Indeed, I do agree with Harry. Ian has a skill. I can't churn out that many words like he does. But thank you so much, Ian. Morning, everyone. Good to see all of you. How do you feel not having your masks on? Is it a good feeling? It's weird, huh? Do you sometimes go like, okay, there's something I'm missing? Something just doesn't seem right. Yeah, so, but it's a good feeling to just go back to pre-2020. Yeah. So good to see all of you. We're going to have an exciting day today. As Ian has said, I am Francis Mwangi, and I do wear many hats. I'm currently the head of IT security and infrastructure at a company called Platcop Group. So Platcop Group is an organization that has many MFIs under it. I'm sure you've heard of Platinum Credit, Premier Credit, all those microfinances. Apart from that, I run a small shop called Cositech. It's an IT security consultancy. And I also lecture in cybersecurity at USIU. So today morning, we're about to have a very amazing discussion. So I'm just going to invite my panelists to come to the stage. I'm sure Dr. Bright Gameli is no stranger to all of you. Currently the CTO at Zetova. So Bright, I welcome you to come onto stage. And anywhere is fine. So Bright is also a very good friend of mine. We go a bit way back. I'd also like to invite Evans Kahodo to the stage. Evans, also a good friend, and he is an IT consultant currently at Konza City. So we would also, sorry? IT security, sorry, my mistake, IT security. So I'm sitting with very heavy hitters here. And our final panelist is going to be joining us virtually. That is Mudeu. I think she is, yes, there she goes. So, morning, Mudeu. So I'll just give you guys an opportunity just to quickly introduce yourselves, you know, what you're all about, even before we go on to the next thing. So let's start with you, Evans.
Good morning. So my name is Evans Kahuto. I'm an information security practitioner. I've previously worked for the ICT Authority, and I'm currently consulting with the Konza National Data Center in Smart City, where they are setting up their national data center. I've also been a friend of CIO for the longest, and my panelists here, I've also been working with them in the industry. And most of you also in the room, I've also interacted with most of you. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Evans. Makofi. And let's go to Bright now.
Morning.
Morning.
So my name is Bright Gameli Maudo. Most people can pronounce the last two names, but I like to repeat all the time.
Yeah.
Until they get it. Anyway, so I'm currently the CTO at a company called Zetova. Zetova is a data science as a service organization. So I lead a team of engineers who can make data make sense, that we can take any kind of data, any log from anything, and make sure that we can actually predict things before they happen, from agriculture to healthcare to just anything, from banking systems as well. But what I'm usually known for is cybersecurity, which is a thing that I do all the time. I came from an offensive security background, so I'm used to breaking into things, systems, applications, networks, whatever it is. And then also on the strategy part of things where it's advisory. So that is my other heart. But the last bit of things which I'm really passionate about is training the next generation of cybersecurity experts to come up. So I call it Africa Hackon. And we've been working with the Africa Hackon, with Safaricom, with CIO, with most of you here. Training the next best cybersecurity engineers in Africa are all going to be between 15 and 20 years old. So that has been my focus for the past few years, and I'm happy to be here.
Asante sana Bright. You have been forewarned. He loves to break into things. So those of you with laptops here, I'm seeing you. I hope you're not using public Wi-Fi. But thank you, Bright. Lastly, but not least, is Mutheu Kimulu.
Good morning. Just to plug into what you said about Bright, before I introduce myself, Bright is one of the reasons why I'm a cybersecurity lawyer. He broke into my phone when I thought it was secure. But on a serious note, my name is Mutheu. I'm a cybersecurity lawyer. We're on the global stage, we're literally only a handful of formally trained cybersecurity lawyers. And this is something that we need to change as a matter of priority. Because I know many people think laws are here to control them, but laws are actually here to prevent anarchy. So we need to, as the world and the continent and the nation is embracing digital transformation, we need to put certain rules and regulations in place to ensure that there is no anarchy and it's equitable. And this is where cyber law comes. It's not here to stifle innovation, it's here to complement innovation. So that is the hat that I am known at CIO, but I'm actually a cybersecurity, counterterrorism, and crisis management lawyer. I have central bank regulatory experience as a former advocate of CPK, the Bank Supervision Department. I have a background in money laundering, and today we're here to talk about a topic that I'm really passionate about, how Africa, we need to adopt more cybercrime legislation.
Thank you so much, Mutheu Kimulu, and we're glad to have someone in the legal industry, at least on our panel today. So today's session, we would like to make it very interactive. As Mutheu has said, we're talking about cybercrime legislation in Africa. And, among a couple of other things that we're going to look at, but I'd encourage you guys to, let's make it a conversation. We're not here to talk at you, but to talk with you. So as we begin, maybe I'd just like to start off with, to kick off with Bright. Bright, we've seen quite a lot of transformation in the past 2 years since COVID checked in. I mean, with remote working and with development teams looking at things like containerization, whether it's through Kubernetes or through AWS Fargate and all these other platforms, where they don't want to really be involved in the managing the infrastructure. They just want to do their coding and leave the rest to the infra team. We've also seen a big shift in the way now security is being handled. So in your opinion, what would you say is the greatest threat for the remote worker today, and especially in Africa, and what are we likely to see as the trend in the next maybe 2-3 years?
I wouldn't even go to 2-3 years. Let's start from the first fact that digital transformation was not a thing that anybody ever thought would come into place until COVID happened. It was a paper that everybody developed and left on shelves or some folder in their boardrooms, and it's been discussed, but nobody ever really actualized them. Then COVID came and the pandemic forced people to work from home, people not to be very far away, and they said, let's get to now start digital transformation, which means you have to basically be at home and be able to work, which means you're taking a laptop that belongs to the company or your personal laptop, which means you have to access ERPs remotely, you have to use VPNs. Some people never heard of VPNs until COVID started. And they're like, what's a VPN? So it became a very nice mindset shift, which became quite difficult, which also comes with its risks. Now, when COVID happened, part of the research that I did was most IT people were left in the office, and everybody else was sent home. Why? They think the IT people will be fixing issues inside the office. But you're forgetting that now they have the liberty to be able to do things that you can't see. Right? Most organizations, the first issue was they had no visibility. Most organizations had no visibility. They have no threat intelligence. There's threat monitoring and then there's threat intelligence. So there are things that are happening. When I ask the question to some organizations that who has access to what and where at what time and what did they do, they can't tell you. They became alert fatigue. Hackers were constantly sending traffic to networks, trying to break into computers, to people's networks, both on-premise and cloud. The alerts that were coming were too much. Incident responders couldn't even filter out exactly what is really a threat and how to deal with it. So I saw people started taking courses of cyber threat intelligence or incident response handling and the likes, and that became a problem. Two, people started working from home. They started getting links of Zoom invite invitations, and they're downloading files. A lot of people got hacked because of that. And then now, obviously, getting to be able to talk to your IT managers or security managers to be able to have access to your ERPs is what made a shift. Everybody started going to the cloud. And they're like, okay, now this thing, we used to just access it on the network with 192.168 and everything. Now we've been given login details, been told two-factor authentication and the likes. So it became quite difficult for people to be able to embrace all of those kind of details, but cloud infrastructures, moving, and nobody planned for that. So trying to do that, there's a lot of security gaps. I tell you right now, there's a website called Shodan, shodan.io. If you go to that website right now and register a free account, you can actually search to see how many publicly available systems in Kenya are actually vulnerable to being attacked. And it takes not more than 2 minutes for you to break in. If I had my laptop, I would have shown you. It takes not more than 2 minutes for you to break in. And if you automate that process, which I did to see how possible it is that I can access those servers, majority, about 75% of them have ransomware because it was too easy for them to break in. So cyber criminals started automating their processes. Many organizations also need to start automating their security responses, what we call security orchestration, automation, and response. That is a new concept. A lot of people don't know what that means. So even trying to create the use cases for banks or organizations is a challenge. So what is going to happen in the next few years? Too much automation. Hackers are moving faster. They're trying to make sure they can do things in an easier way. They're looking for easier targets. So they'll look for anything that has now moved to the cloud, has no security or has weak security, and be able to attack them.
And indeed, amazing. And it's interesting that you mentioned the issue of automation. You mentioned the issue of the shift to the cloud, because that's really where the new threat landscape is now. And if I was to move to Evans, because I know you had a stint in government, and you're now at a stage where you're involved in trying to deploy, technologies. Try to manage security in disruptive technologies. Like if you look at IoT, you look at smart cities. So, in your opinion, what would you say would be the greatest challenge in that sector, and why have African countries been slow to implement the cybersecurity national strategies?
Yes. So if you look at what's going on right now, especially even in our domestic environment, we are seeing more and more people implementing IoT, where as we are sitting in this room, some people are busy accessing their remote CCTV because they want to know what's going on in their house. I know people who even have smart gates. As they approach their gate, they're able to open their gates with the phone and stuff like that. So the IoT is already here. One of the challenges we are seeing is IoT in itself is inherently insecure, most of it, simply because the speed at which it's being rolled out is for convenience. We are seeing where most of the IoT, because of the size of the device, they have embedded operating system, which means it's not similar to the operating system you have in a server or in a desktop. What that does is the security component is missed out at the expense of convenience. I'll take a good case study of like the Mirai, where in 2016, I believe September, some students from one of the universities in the US came up with malware just for the sake of it, to try and see how they can infect the IoT. They ended up getting access to the school network, and later on, they even had a DDoS. Unfortunately, the code got out of hand, and it landed with the wrong people. And even as we speak today, Mirai is one of the biggest threats in terms of IoT, where it's being used to DDoS. We understand even one of the gaming system was actually DDoSed by the same smart devices, even the OVH hosting environment. So essentially, the shift now is such that locally, we have cases where these IoTs have been used as the pivot to try and get access to critical infrastructure. There's a case we were dealing with last year where the vulnerability came in where one of the ICT person was compromised through the IoT device. And with remote working, what it did is the IoT devices provided the critical pivot to get into the infrastructure of the organization. At the end of the day, the infrastructure was compromised. But what was sad is that the way they compromised it was more to do with cryptocurrency. So a lot of mining was going on. And back to the data. Yesterday, I know there was a lot of people talking about data. It's out of that data where we were able to figure out, wait a minute, there is a lot of resource utilization within the environment, but nobody's in the office. At the end of the day, what it ended up being is that the mining was costing power. It's actually the guy in charge of facilities who said, this month the power bill is very high, and started saying we need to shut down some servers. Again, all this was necessitated by the IoT. Now, because of the adoption of this disruptive technology, we have no option but now to come up with cyber legislation or strategies to try and curb this. Because what we realize is that for this specific organization, there were no policies in terms of working from home, in terms of how you authenticate identity and access management, all those things. But ideally, the bottom line was the attacker understood that we don't have strong legal environment where we can be able to sort of get evidence from their side, because the case has already been investigated and we know which country it was originating from. But because of the weak legal framework in terms of collaboration, in terms of evidence collection and all those things, we are seeing the boldness of the attackers where they're now targeting Africa. So if you look at that case in itself, it's a wake-up call where now we need to look at it from an African perspective and say, how else are we going to mitigate? Because these legal instruments are very important in terms of slowing down people, in terms of making sure that we are able to deter the bad guys. So again, this disruptive technology for me is something that we need to look at it from a legal perspective, in the sense that it's going to be one of the biggest problems you're going to face, because moving forward, working from home is going to be the norm. But again, we don't go to the point of securing the homes of our employees. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Evans. And I like the fact that you brought up the issue of the legal instruments, because even as I turn to Mutheu, we have a lot of legislation around this area. We have the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act of 2018. We've got the Data Protection Act, and all of these are coming in at a time when we are trying to relook at how do we look at the issues to deal with privacy, and how do we look at issues to deal with prosecution of cyber criminals. So my question to you, Mutheu, would be, what would you say, in your opinion, has probably not been done enough on the legal space or in terms of legislation, and what can we do moving forward? Because as Evans has very plainly put it, attackers are becoming bold because they know either way we don't have the capacity to be able to follow through these cases in the prosecution process all the way to the end. So what do you think, in your opinion, should be done to strengthen these legal instruments?
Actually, that's just to even plug in from where Evans started to continue the conversation. It is true on the African stage, and especially with COVID. COVID was a digital transformation disruptor, that it enhanced digital transformation by several years. And a lot of us on the African continent, our systems, our infrastructure, our laws, as you've aptly put it, were not as prepared to embrace this new digital transformation that was accelerated by COVID. So these internet desperados actually turned their focus to Africa because our systems are more vulnerable, and so they're easier for them to hack. So having said that, it is really important that we enhance the legal mechanisms on the continent to secure our digital space. And this is a challenge because it's not just one thing to have a cybercrime or a cybersecurity strategy in place, but it has to be one that's relevant, one that's activated. So for example, in Kenya, we do have two legislations currently. We've got, like you've said, our Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act. We've also got our Data Protection Act. Under the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act, we've had less than 200 cases prosecuted under this legislation. One, it's because there was a lot of legal contention surrounding this legislation from its enactment. A lot of provisions were being questioned in court. The other one is we don't have enough capacity. So a lot of the crimes that could actually fall under this legislation are being prosecuted just under criminal law. Then we have our Data Protection Act, which is just now finally coming into play. So even under this act, we've not actually had any real case prosecuted. I think there's one case currently in court, but we don't have any. But when you come onto the African continent, we now need to take a Pan-African approach because cybersecurity is not something that we can deal with as a silo. It needs a multi-stakeholder, a multinational approach. So we can have all these conventions, and the AU has done good work. You know, they issued what is called the AU Malibu Convention, which is an African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Data Protection. And they issued this all the way into 2014. There's also another international convention, the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime. Yet many African nations, Kenya included, are not signatories to these conventions. And these conventions enable us get access to a lot of cyber capacity enhancement, which we really need. On the continent, we're a population of about 1.3, 1.6 billion people. We've only got about 10,000 cybersecurity professionals. And that's from the technical side. On the legal side, I am one of the only formally trained cybersecurity lawyers on the continent. This has to change. We need to secure our digital space. And so when it comes to these cyber strategies and this cyber legislation, governments now need to pay more effort and put more focus on these things. On the continent, we'll find only a third of our nations have cybersecurity strategies. Kenya is touted as one of the nations that has one of the best cybersecurity strategies on the continent. We're one of three. I think the other two countries are Senegal and Eswatini. However, here we are, Kenya being touted as one of the best cybersecurity strategies. Ours turns 8 years old this year. It doesn't even capture our current threat landscape. So now what we need to go back, we need to do a cybersecurity national impact assessment so that we can see what our actual needs are and create a new strategy. And now that NC4, the National Cybersecurity Coordination Committee, which is a committee established under our Computer Crimes Act, has now been operationalized. Hopefully we're going to see more of this moving forward, because if we don't, then we're going to lag behind. A lot of our digital resources, you know, Africa has had a lot of our natural and human resources exploited by non-African nations over years past. Now our digital resources are going to be exploited, and we have a chance to sit at the table with all the other developed nations in terms of digital transformation. We need to secure this as this OIR starts. So there's a lot that we need to do. And a lot of these challenges come in, sometimes it's not even goodwill. There's a lot of goodwill on the continent, a lot of goodwill from governments, a lot of goodwill from organizations, but it's financial resources. So governments now need to start looking, when they're doing the budgetary allocations, to allocate more to cybersecurity, data protection, because training and enhancing capacity is expensive, but it's important for a nation's economic and national security.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mutheu. I feel like we ran out of time so quickly, and we were just getting warmed up. So Harry, next time, please, 1 hour for this discussion. But I'd just like to give an opportunity to the audience, if there's anyone, maybe just a question or two, if there's any burning question that you'd like to ask to our panelists. Yes, Harry.
I don't know about what you said earlier, about 1 hour, but I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this is really to probably Evans and Mutheo. Do the African governments actually know the impact of cybercriminal or cybercrime? Do they know the impact? Because you see, why I'm asking that is because governments understand risk, but do they understand the risk that comes with cybercrime?
Okay.
Maybe I.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Mutheo.
I'm just going to jump in. That's a really great question, Harry, because this is where what I do on a day-to-day basis is sensitizing people and enhancing major policy decision makers on the needs for cybersecurity. Because, like as you've aptly put it, governments do consider risk factors. However, cybersecurity has never been a focus, not just in governments, even in organization boardrooms, and I train organizations. It's in Kenya, 74% of our organizations have no cybersecurity policies. They have no idea what to do, but it's because they're not aware it's a threat. So this is now where forums like what CIO is doing today, what some of us do, there are programs around the country. I'm part of a team at Strathmore where we have an executive program where we sensitize policyholders on the need for cybersecurity awareness and the risks it poses to nations. So a lot of that needs to be done. On the regional stage, AU and the GFC and the ITU are actually working on a program currently where they're trying to enhance capacity in all 54 African states. They're trying to train a few people. So there's stuff being done, but we're not there yet. You're right, we do need to sensitize decision makers more so they realize the serious risks, because this goes into a whole field. Cyber terrorism, cyber warfare, economic crimes, it's a lot.
Okay. Evans and Bright, just very quickly, same.
Okay, yeah, so from my experience, I've seen some governments which in Africa have now come to realize that cyber is becoming critical, to the point where you're seeing very senior people in government being appointed in security position. But what's of importance is there's a group of UN, it's called UGGN, which discusses cybersecurity globally for governments. And we are seeing countries like Kenya and I think Ghana, they are members of these task forces. Ideally, what it does is that those people are now able to come back home and influence from a policy point of view, and now cybersecurity is finding itself in the decision tables. So there's already hope, or there's push towards now people accepting that cyber is a risk, but we're still very far.
Thank you. Bright, anything?
I just think we should just look at the situation of Russia and Ukraine, and the kind of situation that is happening to them because of cyber issues. We can all see the effects of what cyber has done to a country.
Yeah.
Otherwise, my other panelists have already covered everything else.
All right, great. Great question, Harry. So we have time for one more question, then we can conclude. So yes, please introduce yourself.
Thank you for allowing me this last question. I'm Jamil from Symantec. The question that I have is, from a legal standpoint, what is the mandate that local organizations have to do in terms of process once that there has been a breach? In some countries, when there is a breach, there is an obligation of that organization to disclose what it has happened, at least to all the stakeholders. So where do we stand on that point in country? And secondly, what about cyber insurance? So when people are subscribed to cyber insurance, is it something that is getting common? And how do we link that cyber insurance to the legal framework that is there?
So if I got you correctly, cyber insurance, and the first one was?
It was the mandate about disclosing when there is a breach.
Okay, mandate for disclosing when there's a breach. So when there's a breach, okay, so the second question was on cyber insurance, and the first question is, like, in terms of the process of, if I got you correctly, it's the process of being able to disclose when there's a breach, yeah?
Because a lot of time what happens is that when someone has a breach, we just put it under the carpet. So no one discloses about it, and the stakeholders, the customers, the board members at times are not aware about this has happened. And it's an obligation in a lot of countries to know what has happened so that, the process takes place. And what are the implications as well?
Maybe if I may touch on that, a lot of people don't even know the policies that exist when a cyber breach happens, or even know what they have the rights to. So you see people have, I mean, the personal identifiable information that has been leaked out through one way or the other. People don't know that they have the power to even sue a company because their information has been leaked. I think Ali and I sometimes, when we talk about how his information has just been used by someone for something malicious, and it's like, how did this person even get access to that information? If he was to have a lot of time in his hands and a lot of money, which I know he has, Ali can even go against that company and say, you have used my information for something you're not supposed to. So it's a lot of awareness that needs to be created for people to know exactly what the effect of a disclosure can be. Right now in Kenya, or rather in Africa, I think it's only Safaricom who has what you call a responsible disclosure, or what a back bounty program is, where they actually legally pay you to hack the systems. If you're part of the program, that is. Am I right? Yes, and that is something which we've felt a lot of organizations are supposed to pick up. Even if you don't have it formally, at least have that kind of a disclosure on the website saying, if you find something, I'm not going to prosecute you, but I'll be able to come and let you know that I've actually breached organizations. I find it very difficult to approach organizations, even government, as me, to actually disclose some of the things I find. My mentees find things that are so critical that data is being leaked out, but they cannot report it because they're scared, right? So there has to be awareness at some level of breach that people can understand how to be able to do such responsible disclosures. When it comes to cyber insurance, I usually tell people cyber insurance almost does not work in most countries. Why? Because people don't even know how to quantify how expensive that data, that insurance is supposed to cover, how to calculate it, who's supposed to do that investigation and be able to come up with something to say, this is how much is supposed to be paid for that insurance. And sometimes people are now even hacking themselves to get paid for it. You know, there's a company in Kenya who did that. Yeah. They got cyber insurance. They infected themselves with a ransomware, a division, and wanted to be paid for that breach. There's a gray area when it comes to cyber insurance, responsible disclosures, back bounty programs, which I find it's still a lot of awareness that has to be done.
Okay. Evans.
Excuse me. I just had something to add on that.
Okay. Very, very quickly, because we ran out of time, please. Yeah.
Cyber insurance, as he has said, I think different industries and different sectors are approaching it differently. But in Kenya, AIG has been trying, but the problem comes with the claims, just like it happens with our motor vehicles, how to quantify the extent of the damage. But they've been working around with that insurance. So yeah, they're there with the proposal, and there are people who have subscribed. But during the claims, that's where we have the issue. We need to hit that one. About breach reporting, I come from the financial sector, banks. The regulator forces us to report immediately when a breach happens, and there is quarterly reporting of every quarter breaches. You have to submit. And if there's none, you still have to submit 0. Now, where the challenge comes is the accuracy of the reporting, because we don't want to lose our clients. And then last but not least, also the Kenya Bankers Association, they normally do a biannual magazine, but it's only within the banking and financial sector. You won't know.
How about to me, the user, me who is a customer at your bank? Why don't I get to know that my account has been breached? Why is the money being lost in my bank account and I can't get to be know? It's only high level.
And that is where the Data Protection Act will protect us, because it's also giving us a mandate to disclose and to tell those who are affected. But we haven't implemented it yet. Remember, it was just signed in 2019.
In fact, to jump into that conversation, I was just going to say exactly what you said. The Data Protection Act actually does have mandatory reporting requirements. However, because it's a new act, what the Data Protection Office is doing, they've issued regulations, general regulations, 3 different types of regulations. However, they've not begun enforcing them as seriously, which is why we don't have the cases in court, because there's a sensitization process that needs to be out there. However, just remember, ignorance of the law is no defense. You can still be taken to court. So they are reporting mechanisms in Kenya. We're just in the steps of beginning to operationalize them. When it comes to cyber insurance, that's a whole other topic, a whole other conversation segment. We do have cyber insurance in Kenya. However, it's an issue Not that it doesn't work. I tell people you need to plan, prevent, insure. It's just that it's really expensive. You are actually, to an extent, able to quantify the cost of a breach. IBM does reports every year, which you can Google and see. However, it's become so expensive that the reinsurance are getting scared to insure the cyber industry, even locally. So we may have to go the way the Americans did after 9/11, where the government became the reinsurer to the terrorism insurance industry. So governments around the world may need to look at becoming reinsurers to the cyber insurance industry, because it is a huge component. Because many people, especially once data protection penalties start coming in, businesses can be shut down, especially SMEs, just due to penalties. So it's always good to have an insurance.
All right, okay. Thank you so much. Our panelists, gentlemen and lady, we have had a really awesome engagement. Unfortunately, time is up. We have to wind up. We do want to acknowledge a question from one of our online viewers, Matthew Munyiri, who is asking, which is more susceptible to an attack, cloud or on-prem? So Munyiri, we will engage with you on the platform further on that. But for now, we must wind up to pave way for the next session. But I want to say a big, big thank you to Evans Kahotho, Bright Gameli, Mutheo Kimulu. You have been awesome panelists. And to you, the audience, thank you for your questions. And do enjoy the rest of the sessions. Asante.